Thank you, Mr. President. Like my colleague, this is a highly personal issue for me as well. You see, I was conceived in 1960, and my mother was 15 years old when I was born. 3 of my 4 grandparents sought aggressively to find an abortionist. Fortunately, at that time in Nevada, there wasn't one available legally. And I stand here before you today as what would have been, had I been conceived after Roe versus Wade, an aborted fetus. So when we discuss these things, you know, we seem to be talking almost like there's not a third party in this equation. If we go back in the United States history from 1776 to 1865, we had a huge debate over slavery. But you'll notice as we look back, there was one enormous section of the society that was not included in the debate, and that was the slaves themselves. So when we had the abolitionist movement starting in the 1830s, clear up to the time of Abraham Lincoln, when Abraham Lincoln was elected, the Democratic Party had split 3 ways, between Bell, Breckinridge, and Douglas. Abraham Lincoln, who is known today as the great anti-slavery president who got the Emancipation Proclamation, he was elected in the United States with 38% of the electorate. 38%. In other words, 2/3 of the people of the United States supported slavery. Now, while I respect the idea that we're going to put it on the ballot and allow people an opportunity to vote, I think we have to recognize clearly that we are leaving the most significant portion of the equation out. There's nobody speaking for the unborn. Now, the viability question, I'm going to address that. But first, you know, for those of you that come up by my office, you'll notice on the inside of my door, I hang these little plaques, and I move them every day. And this is one of my most popular, one of my most famous. This is a picture of Booker T. Washington, who in my opinion was the greatest black leader in American history. And he had a famous quote. In fact, underneath this picture, you see it says majority rule. And this is what Booker T. Washington said. A lie doesn't become truth. Wrong doesn't become right, and evil doesn't become good just because it's accepted by a majority. So yeah, this may pass with majority vote, but guess who doesn't get the vote? The very babies who are going to be aborted, including, if it had been in 1960, myself. Now, the question of viability. This is a fascinating one to me. This is actually in the Constitution because the age of viability has gone back. You know, we always talk about best available science. You know what the best available science is? We're becoming able to save babies earlier and earlier. And as you know, I'm very blessed. One of my daughters right now is pregnant with twins. And we got to watch on an ultrasound or sonogram or whatever it's called, those little babies in there, and they were about 12 weeks, and you could see them kicking and moving. You could see their face and their hands and their feet, and they were as live as you and me in the environment that they were in. None of us in this room are viable outside of our environment. You could take me right now, and you could throw me into a body of water and hold me under that water, and in 10 minutes, I'd be dead because I'm not viable in that environment. Now, we wouldn't have to have an abortion if they weren't viable. What the heck are we doing here? We are actually stopping something. We talk about playing God. If we leave that baby alone in the womb, what does it do, die or something? No, it is totally alive. It is doing just fine in the environment that it's designed for. And if we don't abort it, it will come to full term and be born and become one of us. Interestingly enough, once it comes out of the female's body, then it becomes something that we protect. Everybody in this room talks all the time about we need to protect the children. You're right, we do. I'm just saying we should extend that to where they are viable inside their own environment. For some reason, that portion of this equation is being ignored. And just as the slaves that were in the United States and were legally property and denied the right to vote and the right to be able to have any say in the debate over whether or not slavery was morally right or wrong, they were denied the chance. And right now, guess who's being denied the chance to discuss the very issues we're talking about? Because I got news for you. Those babies are totally viable. They are growing. They are healthy. And in the miracle of science, we can literally watch on a sonogram or an ultrasound and watch that baby kicking, moving. Look at its fingerprints. By the way, at the age, I think it's 8 weeks, they have perfectly formed fingerprints. At 6 weeks, they've got a perfectly developed heart, which is pounding away. You know, if you and I came to a car accident, one of the things that we would determine whether or not somebody is alive or not is, do they have a heartbeat? Anybody in the medical community would say, yeah, of course, that's when you know if somebody's alive or not. A baby at 6 weeks, this is usually about when you typically discover whether or not you are even pregnant, has a fully pounding heart. So I don't know, I understand, I really am sympathetic to people in these positions where they have to make these kind of decisions, but I'm exceptionally worried that the people that are most impacted, the unborn children, have no say in this matter. And to put this in the Constitution means that if in the future a legislative body does, with advances in medicine and everything else, want to modify some of this stuff, we put handcuffs on them. By putting that in the Constitution, as we all know, that is generally we don't want to do that because there are reasonable reasons to adjust all sorts of laws. We're constantly coming back in this building and changing things. But once you put it in the Constitution, then that's pretty much, it takes our hands out of it completely. So while I do respect the idea that these are personal decisions, please keep in mind as we go forward, and obviously this is going to end up on the ballot, as we go forward, that just like in the old slavery days, don't forget that there's somebody else in this equation who has no voice in the decisions that we're going to make, and who frankly deserve it. The evidence is so overwhelming that these are not unviable tissue mashes like somebody still tried to tell me the other day. These are living, breathing human beings in an environment that they're perfectly capable of continuing to live in, and we should at all costs, I don't care what the majority, the citizens of Nevada say, frankly, because I don't believe majority rule in every single case is correct. Just as our ancestors, to our shame and discredit today, they supported slavery. 2/3 of them, as late as 1860, were still in favor of keeping people enslaved. And guess who didn't get to vote? The slaves. Guess who doesn't get to vote on this? The unborn children. Same exact principle. Please, as we go forward with this, and I assume it's going to pass, probably party line, as we go and put this on the ballot, keep in mind that we're talking about a human being every bit as live and viable as you and I sitting here right now. Thank you, Mr. President. I urge my colleagues to vote no on SJR7.
Senator Stone.